Hey everybody, welcome to SharePoint TV, day 2. And this morning we're joined by our guest, Laura Rogers. Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am from Birmingham, Alabama. I've been doing SharePoint for about 13 years.
Wow.
And I started off as a server admin a long time ago, and was an Exchange admin before that, and ended up in SharePoint. So long story short, here I am. I love building business processes in SharePoint, forms and workflows, and I have my own company, iwmentor.com.
Awesome.
Training company.
Yeah. What do you train on?
SharePoint, Power Apps, and Flow.
So Power Apps, that's the reason that brought us together this bright and early morning here in Las Vegas. So everybody says if you need to learn anything about Power Apps, you need to go talk to Laura. So since you've got a lot of experience with Power Apps, 13 years with SharePoint, you've probably heard of this thing called InfoPath.
I remember InfoPath. I actually wrote a Microsoft book about InfoPath 2010 back in the day. It was great.
So that's a perfect start.
At the time.
Yeah, it was great at the time. So speaking of InfoPath and speaking of Power Apps, how do you think about this journey from InfoPath to Power Apps and just the whole form story with SharePoint?
It's been really interesting. So back in SharePoint 2007 is when workflows and InfoPath first came out, and then in 2010 they made it so the InfoPath could be web-based. That was huge because of the company I worked for. They weren't going to roll out the InfoPath client to everybody, so that was just a big leap for me when you could do web-based forms. And so I went full into that and just created forms and workflows like crazy at the corporation I worked at. And then InfoPath's kind of an getting older product, and they kind of stopped doing any more development on that. It was like 5 or 6 years ago or so. And then I kind of freaked out because I wasn't sure what I was going to do without InfoPath. It was so much fun.
You lost a good friend.
But so Power Apps came out, and Power Apps and Flow are the new way to automate your business processes with forms and workflows. And it's been an interesting journey with Power Apps too, because it's an interesting learning curve, plus they keep improving sort of the easier things that for business users. So it's an interesting, so we call it like jumping off the Power Apps cliff. You can do some things that are easy, but then as soon as you want to do some kind of crazy logic, then that's when it gets a little complicated. It's very different than InfoPath, but I think it's a lot of fun. I love figuring out logic and formulas. Not a programmer.
Well, that's actually a good segue into the next question. So you've mentioned a couple of things. As one, you can do a lot of creative things with Power Apps, obviously, and for people that aren't familiar with Power Apps, we're going to show you some stuff here in a minute. And then the second thing that you mentioned is Power Apps is kind of this great way to democratize forms as well, because you can go from low code, no code, and then you can go even beyond that. So probably what's interesting to everybody watching us bright and early in the morning that has already had a cup of coffee or two, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that you can do with Power Apps, because I'm sure there's a ton of interest in exactly what can I do and some examples of that.
Sure. All right, so let's see, let me just go ahead and flip this into presenter mode. All right, this is, first of all, what you need to know is when you go to web.powerapps.com and you start to create a new Power App, there are a ton of great Microsoft sample Power Apps. So you have this long list when you go to this screen of all these names of these sort of example apps. So these are some screenshots from the Microsoft pre-built sample apps. So you have things like HR apps, IT, personal apps, business process apps, and product apps. Now, I don't usually take one of these example apps and just make it my own and make that become my new business form or anything in production. What I do though is I learn from them. And I take them and I dig in and I learn, figure out how they did, like what formula they used to do something cool in there. And I also just the creative stuff. I'm not creative. So for the creative stuff in there, like, oh, look at this screen. Look how neat they made that look with the little buttons. That's a great idea. So with Power Apps, you have a blank slate. I mean, you can pretty much do anything you want. So it really helps. You kind of get overwhelmed with, especially if you're not creative, like where do I start? So these are really great for getting ideas, for seeing examples of what you can do, and to kind of get you familiar with the way some of those things can be accomplished. They even have a couple of apps in there that are training apps that you install the app. Yay. So you install the app, and when you're designing the app, it takes you through, it walks you through, it actually teaches you each step of some of these different, how to do different things in the Power App. So it's a Power App that teaches you Power Apps.
That's pretty cool.
So that's a great idea. I'll go ahead and show you just one. It was something that I created that's a really just sort of typical example. So you can think about this as just any typical business form, just any kind of request form. So this is a travel request, and this is a very simple, sort of little welcome screen. But I had some fun with creating this travel request and this business process concept and showing how you can do some of the logic in here. So I think I will go to SPC and fix that. Let's see. And it pre-fills in my picture. This is from my user profile in Office 365.
That's pretty cool.
It pre-fills in my picture, my phone number, and my department. And that comes from a connector in there that lets you just tap into user profile information. So let's see, Vegas, I think that's going to cost a lot of dollars. And it also pre-fills in my manager. So I'm logged into this just demo tenant of my own that I've got a bunch of fake people in. So my manager in here is good old Garth Fort. Remember him?
Poor Garth. Everybody refers to Garth as a fake person, and he's actually real.
Oh, yeah. Because all the names from the fake people came from actual Microsoft people. Back in the day, that's so funny. So and then I have a status. It's new. I submit it. And then this actually kicks off a flow. So it tells me that I submitted my request. And then a flow kicks off and actually sends an approval to Garth. And let's see, Garth is going to approve it. I don't know if I necessarily want to go, log into Flow and on email and all that. But we'll go look at a different one here. Now, so what I'm doing is it sends one of those approval actions that you have in Flow, where they get the really nice, simple email that shows them the information about the travel request with a nice, easy approve and reject button in the email. But what I did was I added all these fields you see here at the bottom. Those are just more fields that I added to this travel request, just a SharePoint list. So every time after someone does one of the approvals in the flow, I just have it writing back to these fields in the SharePoint list, like manager outcome, manager date, manager comments, and things like that. Just because I like the idea of just keeping the approval process in the form and not having it, data everywhere and tasks and all this.
That's pretty cool. Look at Billy Bob. Billy Bob approved it.
Yeah, so it would go to the manager, and then a different approval action would send it to. So then one of the things you can do, what I did in here was I have a separate SharePoint list called approvers, and I have a list of departments and a list of the people who are the approvers for the officially determined approvers for each department. And then you can do this in Power Apps or Flow, either way, but it goes and it looks at what department I'm in from this department field, and it goes to that approver list and finds out who the approver is for that department.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so you can make it pre-fill just a field in the Power App if you want people to maybe see the person before they submit the form, or you can just have Flow just automatically go look up who the person is when it gets to them. And so that's how it decided that Billy Bob was the department approver. So then he got an email. All right, so that is my travel request. My husband created Pong in Power Apps. I'm not going to show you that. But it's pretty much sky's the limit in Power Apps. There are
obviously, if you're creating Pong in Power Apps, I'm waiting to see Pac-Man.
Yeah. Seriously. I did this customer projects demo is a nice sort of the concept of maybe having a small business. And I have a small business, and I use SharePoint lists for my customers and my projects and things like that. And so I created this really simple app that you can use on the go. Maybe you're going on site to clients, or you're, I'm not sure what's taking it so long. You're going on site to clients and you need to enter your timesheet in just on the go. So you can go to your list of customers here. Let me go to preview mode.
Looks like a mobile app.
It is. And that's the idea, is that you're on the go, you're on site of your customers, so it's a mobile app. Another thing you might want to do on the go is do some tweeting. It does have some social in here. This is one of the first apps I created a long time ago, but it's great for demos, showing all the different things that you can do in here. So I'll go to my Contoso customer, and then this is so I have a SharePoint list of customers, a SharePoint list of projects. So these are all the projects associated with that customer. And then I can see very easily if I'm over the amount of hours that we had planned for that project, it will be red. And then I can go into whatever project it is and enter in my time, or I can go view time and look at the list of existing time. I don't know if I just broke Power Apps there. That's a new one. I've never seen this screen completely disappear.
Too many hours.
Yeah. No, wow, that is amazing. The whole thing disappeared. So let me show you one more that is, or we could just keep going. Another really cool one. This is one that the idea behind this is that it's a company store. So I'm not actually buying anything. I'm not actually spending money. It's not e-commerce, but I'm in a company and I'm in my cubicle and I just need a stapler, or I need some more paper clips, or my chair broke and I need to get a new wheel for it, or whatever you do in your cubicle. So I created this company store where I can go see the list of products here. I need some bunny slippers, for my cubicle.
Of course, everybody needs bunny slippers for their cubicle.
That's a really long sound clip. I better wait. So, and I have
everybody needs bunny slippers and a hat when they're in their cubicle.
So I have to go decide what I want. Now this is a SharePoint list, and it's just the magic. There's not really any magic behind where this photo is coming from. The photos are just in a SharePoint library, but in the SharePoint list of products, it's just a hyperlink or photo field, and it's just got a URL to the photo that's in the SharePoint library. So that's where the data is coming from. It's pretty simple. So then I can see my shirt, and I think I'll take 7 company shirts, and it tells me my total instantly. And then I can add this to the cart, which is in Power Apps. If you know Power Apps, there's a concept of a collection.
Right.
So it's not actually putting things. Are you sure you wanted to add it to your cart? Yes. It's not actually putting things in SharePoint yet.
Right.
It's just a collection. It's just sort of like a temporary, sort of like a database, like a table of information in the Power Apps. So it is putting them in there when I'm doing my cart. I got a lot of keyboards.
You got a lot of keyboards, a couple shirts, some bunny slippers.
A couple of mice. And then I can go to my cart.
You broke more than your chair, apparently. You broke just about everything in your cubicle.
And then I can go to my cart. Now, this was a fun one because in Power Apps, this is a gallery. Now, it's still kind of ugly. Again, I'm not creative. In Power Apps, this is a gallery showing that collection of things that I've been adding. And it's showing me my total, but then I made this so I can edit it. So I can go change my mind and say, maybe I really only want 2 shirts. And then save that, and it actually readjusts the total right there. And it looks pretty simple. I mean, that's what all carts do online, but it's really fun creating all the logic behind that. And then I can check out, which this sends all those items to a SharePoint list called orders. And then it also sends me an email that says, thank you, you ordered this, and it sends me a list, a little HTML table of all the stuff I ordered. So,
very cool.
And I can show you, I'll go ahead and let me see if this thing will do, if it will do the responsive thing. Oh, not really. It's when I open this on my phone and I made it so that when I turn it, everything adjusts automatically on the screen in this app, in this particular app. I went to the trouble of changing all these shapes and things to be width equals basically parent width, which means whatever the width of the app is in your device. It's so, and they're all relative to it. So anyway, so I'll show you around the interface a little bit if we have some time.
Yeah,
if you'd like to
do
see
it.
the design
let's
interface.
go ahead and see the design interface, because I'm sure the people watching are definitely going to want to see some of that. This is a really cool app, obviously.
Yeah.
Does it have an approval process? Can they build it?
Well, of course. I mean, you can do anything you want. So this particular one doesn't have an approval process. The other two, the other ones did, though.
Get ready, Billy Bob. Laura wants some hats.
Okay, so this is new. So I'm just noticing this for the first time right here. Components are apparently, they are right here. What they did is they just added this sort of new little panel over here. But anyway, components are a new thing that has just come out that I was kind of playing with in here. But the first thing you need to know is this concept of screens. And a screen, if you're coming from InfoPath, a screen is like a view, and where you kind of just go navigate between different areas in the app. So you're starting off with this blank slate, though. Now, you can customize just SharePoint list forms with Power Apps, and it does. When you do that, it has a lot built in for you, like a form and some just automatically built-in form functions here and there. But when you're doing what's called a standalone app, then you can use those templates, you can do whatever you want, and it's sort of a different experience. A couple of important things to know is you don't have to do a customized list form. I'm not sure, everybody doesn't necessarily know that if you want it to be SharePoint data. Right. You can do a standalone app. So the main thing about customized list forms is that you can't do any kind of backup or make a copy of it. You can't save the whole list as a template and have that Power App and take it somewhere. So that doesn't work that way, and you can't save it or export it or anything. But
so there's a caveat there.
Yeah, but when you do a standalone app, I like them much better because then you don't have that kind of limit. But the main negative to that is then it's just not the default form for the list. Right. But I just say just take users to the app and just give them a button that says go to the travel request instead of going to the SharePoint list. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you start off with a blank screen, and then you have these all these different things that you can add to it, like buttons, and buttons and labels and all these nice controls, and they make it look nice and slick and modern. And you also have an entire control called a form control, which will, if you're doing SharePoint data, it will just have all your fields built into it, so that it makes that part easy. But so if you're not a developer and have never used Power Apps before and you're coming from InfoPath, this might look, all this around the screen might look a little overwhelming. But you just have these objects over here, just controls like buttons and labels, and they're down the left side. Each screen has different controls on it. And I can click between the controls down the left to take me to that screen to that control. And then each control has properties. And so the properties is what is the part that's a little overwhelming. So first of all, you have the ability on the Home tab to just do some simple things that you've done before in Word and Excel, like change colors. But all those same properties, like the font color and the fill color and all those things, are also just down here on the right. So it's just a different way of getting to those same properties. And this is a nice little simple interface over here on the right. But then you also have the Advanced tab, which is also just the same properties. So it's just kind of an ugly, not as business user friendly kind of view over here with just this long list of properties. And then those same exact properties of that button, it's always contextual, are also the same ones that are listed over here. So that's one of the first things that I teach when I teach my Power Apps class, is that don't let, it's just properties of controls, and don't let it, get too overwhelming, because it's all the same exact properties, just a lot of different ways that you can use them. And so the functions that you do in here are really just like Excel. I mean, if you've ever written a formula in Excel where it kind of just asks you, you start typing a function and it's got sort of a little wizard that helps you out and tells you. That's the way it works in Power Apps with formulas and functions. Like when I'm writing PowerShell, I find that I have to go Google things a lot, or Bing them. I have to go Bing them, and I have to go to figure out the syntax of things, and I have to go kind of look everywhere because I don't know PowerShell off the top of my head. But in Power Apps, I find that I don't really have to do that, because whenever you're typing a function, this is just an RGBA, it's just the color of whatever box I have selected. But whenever you're in a function, it tells you exactly what goes where. And as I click my cursor between the different parameters of the function, this top little bar lights up and tells me what it expects there. And if I type, text instead of a number or something, it will let me know I typed the wrong kind of data. So it's pretty easy. And I'll just show you one, the little checkout thing that's kind of complicated as far as the level of complexity that you can get to in here. So when I add something to my cart, I'll go ahead and go to preview mode and add something to my cart.
Of course,
this
you need
pop
four
up.
mice too. So.
Do what? Yeah.
Four wired.
Just in case. Wired. So then this is where I did this little fun complex formula. So you can get pretty crazy. Shane was telling me the other day that he created a formula that was like 15 pages long in here to do something. Wow. So you can do pretty simple things, and you can, there are, again, a lot of business usery, kind of easy things that you can do, but you can get kind of complicated. So this is just collecting a bunch of information about what I just bought into this collection, and it's doing some math while it's collecting it, and then it's making, after I click yes, then it's making the pop-up box go away. So you have variables in here. You didn't have those in InfoPath. So anyway, that's a very, very quick, down and dirty kind of example of what you can do and what the interface looks like.
So it looks like with Power Apps, you can come in from day one, really not knowing anything, being kind of a forms neophyte, and get started and create simple forms. And then if you wanted to, you can go all the way to the other side and start creating
the dark side.
The dark side, and start creating really complex forms with a lot of capability that InfoPath didn't provide and still doesn't provide.
Oh, and so many data sources that you can use in there too. I mean, hundreds of them.
And then of course, you have your native integration with Flow, right? So if you want to build workflow into that. So you kind of have this complete business process management solution that workflow and InfoPath just kind of filled. And then of course we have SharePoint Designer. But we won't go into that topic because we already talked yesterday with Vesa about the Fantastic 40. So we just kind of keep bringing these things up. So that was really cool. If somebody wanted to learn more about Power Apps, they're just getting started, they're watching you here, and they're seeing some stuff that they really like. They're like, you know what, I need some bunny slippers, I need a ton of hats, I broke the wheel on my chair, and I need 4 wired mice, because everybody needs wired mice these days. Right? So if somebody wanted to grab all of that, where would they go to learn and get started with this?
My own company is IW Mentor, and the website is iwmentor.com. And I actually have a special going on just for people.
Just for me?
For people. It's for people at this conference. So the URL is kind of complicated, but it's iwmentor.com/pages/SPC-special. So if you can get to that URL, there's a big coupon on there just for you. That was cheesy.
And it looks like for those of you watching right there on the chat from SharePoint TV, it's iwmentor.com/pages/SPC-social. So Laura's got some great specials going on to help you. Oh, special. Did I say social? It's early. So you can visit that webpage and get some great training from Laura. She showed you a little bit of what you can do. I'm sure there's a ton more.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, we don't have time to dive into all of it. Do you have some sessions this week as well?
I had one yesterday about making the most out of the box web parts, and Friday we have a sold out all day workshop on Power Apps and Flow.
Awesome. So if you're here in Las Vegas with us, it's not too late to join Laura on Friday, or it is too late. It's not Friday yet.
Well, it's sold out.
Well, that definitely makes sense. You can stand in the doorway and put your ear against the wall, and you can just kind of listen and learn. So if you're here on Friday and you're attending Laura's workshop, I'm sure you're going to learn a ton. Otherwise, you can just put a cup against the wall and see how much you can learn through the wall itself. And if you're not here in Vegas, Laura still has a special for you at SPC Special, not Social, where you can definitely learn more as well. And then, as you mentioned earlier, there's some samples that can kind of help you get started. So if you're not a designer and you're looking for some inspiration on how to design a button or maybe some backgrounds and you can't figure out how to do the gradient, because we saw that in your company store app. It's got a nice gradient background, so you can learn a few things that way and reapply those to your own solutions. So I just want to thank everybody again, bright and early in the morning from SharePoint TV. We'll see you soon.